just saying, oh, I don't want force, I don't want coercion, doesn't really tell you anything, because anytime you have scarce resources, you have some system where some people get to access them and some people don't. It's coercive. What you're really saying, when you say, it's wrong to take away something that's something from somebody that's theirs. Okay, but all the work is being done by that last word, theirs. What is it that makes something yours? And because if you mean it's wrong to take away something that's legally yours, then taxation's fine, right? That part of your income you owe to the IRS is legally the property of the government. So what you have to mean is morally yours. But in that case, that's where the argument starts, right? Usually your kind of internet libertarians end it there, but that's where the real argument starts. Why is it that we think certain people are entitled to certain bits of stuff in the world, so that it might be wrong to take it away from them? So Robert Nozick, in that book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, has a fairly specific theory of the three things that can make something yours.
So one of those things is you can take something that's not being used. So original acquisition. So let's say there's some land that's just sitting around, as land does, and nobody's farming it, and you go in and start farming it, then that's your land. So you have originally acquired that land. Do I move on? It still says one.
Sure, let's do two.
And number two is when you make a transfer with somebody. So you sell it, you barter it, you give it away, and then whoever has it, it's now theirs. So if I give Ben, Ben gave me a lovely flower on Valentine's Day. So that means that the flower was then mine, because we had a capitalistic act between consenting adults. If that's not romantic, I don't know what is, baby.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Nozick can't turn a phrase. That's what he says. Describe voluntary transfers. Selling something, giving something away, leaving something to your descendants. Capitalistic.
Trading something.
Yeah.
So if I get it in that way, then it's mine.
All right, 3.
And then the third is justice or restitution. Yeah. So if I dump toxic waste in my backyard, I lose the right to some of what I have, so that they can get it in compensation.
Yeah. So Nozick is willing to say that if you harm somebody in ways that go against the free market rules, then
they're entitled to some of my stuff.
Right. That they're exactly in compensation. But what he would be very against is giving something like he even says at one point, right? I mean, very few libertarians are this consistent, but Nozick actually does say at one point, look, maybe there is a case for reparations for the descendants of slaves, but not because this group of the population is doing worse than other groups, but just purely as a matter of restitution for for the results of past violations of those principles of capitalistic acts between consenting adults. So
I feel like there's a lot going on here that needs that
every one of them. Yeah.
Fist gesture.
Yeah, exactly. So certainly if you're saying that something should be transferred to someone not because they've suffered a particular harm, where harm doesn't just mean something bad happened to them, but something bad happened to them that violates the rules of the system. If it's not that somebody's suffered a particular harm, it's just that they have material needs that aren't being met, then Nozick says, no, you can't legally mandate a transfer to just for that, right? Just because somebody needs health care, right? It's okay, that's nice. We all need things. You can't take away what I am entitled to in order to pay for somebody else's health care. And so, I mean, I think there are a few things you could say about this. most obviously, how much is what Nozick is describing here? Like, if this is supposed to be a theory that justifies property rights in the real world, how much does the history of the real world resemble this? That people just sort of claim, have just acts of original acquisition. Yeah, right? Yeah. Like, it seems like, I don't know, just off the top of my head, I think, pre 1492, there were other people, like, much of the land in the New World was not, in fact, unclaimed, and so a lot of current property, can ultimately be traced back to that. A lot of the U.S. economy was originally built up by people who were, perhaps engaged in capitalistic acts, but not between consenting adults, right? That nobody consented to be, taken to work on a, cotton plantation. So it seems like, and again, even in like England, you have, original, like, kind of at the dawn of capitalism, you have peasants who are driven off their land by enclosures, and so they're desperate enough to work in factories. But like, that's like a extremely cozy story about consent compared to what happened in this continent. So that's the first point. That it seems like even if you completely agree with Nozick, it's not clear how relevant his theory is going to be to the real world.
Now I want to know where you got that rose. Did you have legitimate claim to that rose? Was our capitalistic act really between consenting adults? Did you get it in an act through consenting adults?
Well, I didn't enslave anybody or like kill anybody off with plague infected blankets to take it from them. But my ownership of it, is every penny that I have. I don't know. I think Nozick would actually say, I guess actually maybe now I'm okay. I think now all of my money derives from the private sector in one way or another. But before that, right? Like anything that I bought you back when I was working for Georgia State, that's a taxpayer funded institution. I think he'd say that that's not money that I have a legal claim to. So
do I have to return your concert tickets? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, if Nozick is right, let's see if Nozick is right. So that's the first question. How relevant is this to anything that's happened, to property rights as they exist in the real world, right? Like, if you want to defend not just the idea that some hypothetical people in an alternate dimension would be entitled to what they have, but the idea that people in this universe are entitled to what they have, it seems like it's not going to be very useful. So that second problem. Okay, let's just, ignore that. Let's pretend that we live in a world where all of the current property claims came about in a totally immaculate way. That, Adam and Eve and their descendants fanned out from the Garden of Eden, claiming unclaimed pieces of land and trading with each other in a totally consensual way. But that we just ended up with a distribution of wealth exactly as unequal as the one that we have in the real world. Now, pretty unlikely, but let's just roll with it for a second. Would that really be okay? Like, and is there no reason why this would be objectionable?
We got to take care of the dummies. It's kind of how I see it. Even if you're a dummy, you're still
Elon Musk. I think even in a just society where he wasn't rich anymore, and he had to survive his wits. I don't want to let Elon starve to death. So
if Jebediah and Zerubbabel, if Zerubbabel and Zebediah make this unequal trade, because Zerubbabel, whatever I said, is an idiot.
Zerubbabel.
Still got to take care of Zerubbabel.
Yeah. So right. So that's I remember Amber Frost from your favorite podcast said once that one of the best things about supporting universal programs and not just sort of limited means tested things that, that liberals might, is that you can stop like sort of morally judging everybody in your head. Oh, do they deserve help? Do they deserve help? You could just say every bastard deserves better, right? Like
even Zerubbabel.
Yeah, look, sure. So Zerubbabel is a big dummy, right? Like it's not actually a result of all of the historical facts that shape the distribution of wealth in our world.
He just made a bad deal.
He's just like,
no, Jenn can't stand those people, Danny. I cannot stand those people.
I like them a lot better than Jenn does. So whenever I turn it on in the car, she's like, oh my God.
We have to. I would rather listen to that 15-volume LBJ biography.
Oh yeah, Robert Caro, that's good.
Oh man,
I'm down.
We talked about that before. That's a cure for insomnia.
I'm down to the last 23 hours of the last volume. So, yeah, Nando Vila got me on those. Those are good
glad
books.
We're not taking any car trips together soon. You should be able to finish that up.
But yeah, like, so Zerubbabel has no one to blame but himself. He keeps like selling, I don't know, he sold all of his farmland for some magic beans or, whatever, right?
I knew you were going to say that.
So, but should he then starve to death or,
I would say no.
Yeah. So,
gotta protect the dummy.
So that is so that is like one big objection. And even if you agree that, like, okay, let's say if you meet one of Nozick's requirements, that gives you some claim on a piece of property. Is this like an indefeasible claim? Like, is this just like override any other considerations that could ever be brought up? That like you like just like this is like the divine right of kings, the divine right of property owners, that like no other value could possibly outweigh that. So seems wrong. But then also, do we in fact want it to just grant that this is the right theory of like what counts as just distribution of goods, right? In other words, like, even if you basically agree with Nozick, you could still disagree with his conclusion because you could say that like other values outweigh this in some circumstances. But should you agree with Nozick in the first place? Why not agree with Rawls, for example, who says that a just distribution is one that you would agree to from the original position, which we've talked about before. You want to real quick recap what the original position is?
You don't know anything about yourself, and so you choose a set of rules where that you're happy with.
Yeah, so you don't,
that quick and dirty enough.
Yeah. That you don't know who you're going to be in the society that you're designing, right? So if you're like cautiously maximizing your interests, you wouldn't want to disadvantage anyone.
Because you could be disadvantaging yourself.
Exactly. And so whether, if you believe in Rawls' theory, like that, whether that gets you, people will argue, and Rawls himself kind of changed his mind about this over the course of his life, about what economic system that gets you. But the point is, this is a theory that's like very, very different from Nozick's. And so why should we just think that like Rawls' theory of what makes a distribution just is the right one? Why should we think that Nozick has gotten it right? And Nozick does have an argument for this. He said,
I would hope so.
Yes, this point did occur to him. He says, well, the problem with Rawls, who thinks that, like Rawls thinks that, well, the only kinds of inequalities that you'd sign off on from the original position are ones where you'd be better off on the bottom end of that inequality than you would be, in a more equal alternative. So if the, I don't know, for whatever reason, we have to have a little bit of an inequality for incentives or whatever, that you're still better off having less than somebody else, maybe that would be okay. But certainly you can't have arbitrary inequalities that don't benefit the worst off people in any way. Nozick says, well, the problem with almost any similar theory, the problem with like just being an egalitarian and say everybody deserves the same amount, the problem with being a Rawlsian and says, well, everybody should have whatever would result from a system you'd sign off on in the original position, the problem with, being a meritocrat and saying whoever works hardest, should have more or whatever. The problem with all of these theories, according to Nozick, is that these are theories that say there's a certain outcome of distribution that's just because it's that outcome. But Nozick thinks, no, you got it all wrong. That justice in distribution of resources isn't about outcomes. It's about processes. And why should we believe that? Well, he's got this example about Wilt Chamberlain, who there we go. That's Wilt Chamberlain, who was a extremely popular basketball player.
Especially among the ladies.
Yeah, I believe. Do you remember the number off the top of your head? It's like, I think he.
I can't count that high.
Yeah, whatever it was, it was like a pretty jaw-dropping number of ladies that he claimed. He was extremely popular with, So this is Nozick's. Okay, Dara says 1,000. That's about what our
10,000.
10,000. Okay, Jesus. Okay, yeah. So JB says 10,000 too. All right. So very popular guy. And so Nozick says, look, let's imagine we live in a world that Rawls would call just, or that any of these other theories. Pick your favorite theory of how you think resources should be distributed, and let's imagine we live in that one. And then, so everybody is starting out with as much as they should have, according to your theory. Well, now imagine that Wilt Chamberlain.
How many women did
Nozick sleep with? Probably not 10,000.
Hey,
that would. I mean,
you never know.
No. Philosophers
can be very popular with ladies.
No shade on Robert Nozick, but I'd be surprised if it was 10,000. Wilt Chamberlain. Yep. That's the dude. Wilt Chamberlain demands this hypothetical that everybody, what was it? Give him $1 or $2.
25 cents.
25 cents. Everybody gives him 25 cents to watch him play. When they go to a game, there's a little special Wilt Chamberlain bin, because even though he started out with what, according to your theory, is the share of society's resources he should have, he wants more, and he asks everybody who likes watching him play basketball to spend 25 cents to see him play. And Nozick says, look, who could object to this? It's like, this is 25 cents that all these people should have, according to your theory. And he has like kind of a salty line about this where he's like, look, they could spend it on whatever. They could spend it on Issues of Dissent, which was a popular socialist magazine that, I guess if Nozick were writing this now, he'd say Jacobin. They could spend it on Jacobin subscriptions, whatever, but what they choose to spend it on is Wilt Chamberlain. And so many people do this that before you know it, Wilt Chamberlain has way more than your theory of distribution says that he should have. Sooner or later, he's like the richest person in the world. So is this unjust? And Nozick says, well, who would it be unjust to? Certainly not to Wilt Chamberlain. He doesn't have a legitimate complaint. Who does have a legitimate complaint? Certainly not the people who voluntarily, gave their quarters to see him play basketball. So, how is this wrong? It's not wrong. See, you fools. It's justice is not actually about outcomes. Justice is just about process. And my intuition there is, if I want to spend my quarter to sleep with, to see Wilt Chamberlain, I should be able to. All right, tune in next week for the philosophy segment with new guests yet to be announced. So,
with one of your 10,000 ladies that you get as a philosopher.
So in case, sure, right? No, I think it's fair to, I think you have to give Nozick this much, right? Like, no reasonable person would say that it's bad that people would spend 25 cents on that, right? That's it's their quarter. They can spend it how they like. They're not hurting anybody, as far as that goes. Fine, right? But then I think a further question Nozick doesn't really explore is, okay, at best, there are At best, this establishes that justice is partially about process. But does it show that it's entirely about process? Like, let's say that the result of all this is that, they're Wilt Chamberlain and I don't know, like some other entertainers that people like will pay for, etc., become incredibly rich, and they're taking up a huge share of society's resources. And follow-up questions: would taxing them help pay for things that would benefit, the rest of society? Does the fact that they're so wealthy give them undue political influence? Does it distort their economic relationships with other people? And if so, I mean, look, I think under any reasonable conception of socialism, I mean, I think, like just having a lot of people pay to watch you play basketball is like one of the least exploitative possible ways of making tons of money.
My question is, what is a Felix?
What is a Felix?
What is a Felix?
Oh, that's one of the hosts. So,
Host of what?
Chapa.
Oh man, dude, I don't want to be any of those people. I can't stand those people.
A couple of them have been guests on this show.
I know. I'm entitled. Maybe they don't like me. Have you asked them? We're all entitled.
Wow.
I'll be Shakira's tax woman.
So should, like, and perhaps, Wilt Chamberlain, brings people enough joy that, that it's fine. It's fine for.
He was bringing the joy, all right.
I don't know how much joy he was bringing in each case if you run the numbers, but
sure.
that's. But in a case, I think. But should he? Does this really establish that Chamberlain, even in this hypothetical, would be entitled to 100% of the, of those quarters? Is it terribly unjust for us to tax away a portion, perhaps even an extremely large portion, which would still, presumably, there's so many people, leave him making a very good living?
But what if I want my 25 cents to go to Wilt Chamberlain?
Okay, so
I don't want that 25 cents to help the homeless.
Okay,
I gave it to Wilt Chamberlain,
and now
to give it to Wilt Chamberlain,
and now it's been taken away to make sure that everybody has housing. Yeah, I guess I would say that I'm not overly concerned with your feelings in that case. Like, I think Wilt Chamberlain is fine. Like, yeah, without your quarter. But that has
nothing to do with my feelings.
Sure.
I mean,
lots of people can want lots of things. I have a, as Mick Jagger so wisely teaches us, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometime, you just might find that you get what you need. And so I'd say that the needs of people who need housing overwhelm your eccentric desire that Wilt Chamberlain be slightly richer.
Not that he'd be richer, but that's how I get to choose how I spend my money.
To a point.
And if that's how I'm choosing to spend it,
I mean,
it's like the people who give the money to the homeless people and then they're mad when they take it to the liquor store.
That they, Jenn is not a closeted objectivist.
Or just throwing this out
or
there.
any other kind of objectivist. Yeah. Right, but this is the question, right? Are people, in fact, entitled to guarantee that money that they spend on something eternally stays with the object of the transfer until that person voluntarily transfers elsewhere, or might there be good reasons why the object of that transfer might have to give some of it back to society to meet other people's needs? And I have to say, none of this strikes me as an overwhelmingly good reason to say yes, right? I mean, that if you can, I mean, obviously money is fungible. It's not like, oh, this is, like the IRS is taking Jen's quarter and, they're taking this quarter, that he just has this certain amount of money in his bank account pre-taxes and then he has less post-taxes. But that seems fine. It's very, again, I think we could kind of turn around Nozick's question on him. Who's being harmed? Well, I mean, Chamberlain a little bit, and that he'd be even better off if he weren't being taxed. But does Chamberlain's preference here override the preferences of people who would like to have housing? And how do we decide that? Well, we could decide that the correct theory of who's entitled to what is given by Nozick's 3 conditions and absolutely nothing else. But that seems implausible to me. I think that you need a much better reason than the Wilt Chamberlain article to say no. Why not say that people should have whatever they would have under a system that we would all sign on to if you didn't know whether you were going to be Wilt Chamberlain or the homeless guy. That sounds much more intuitive to me. So
I'm only going to sign on to this system if I know I'm going to be Wilt Chamberlain.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.